You know, as a child, I was pretty much angry all the time. Not so much angry because I didn't have a father, but because the father that I had rejected me. You know, I went through life and channeled a lot of my anger into athletics, and I did really well. I played in state championship football games, I scored touchdowns, and the accolades were great. But it didn't resolve my anger issues. And my anger always resulted in violence, to the extent that when the drug game became pretty popular, I got heavily involved in trafficking cocaine. I used to go into Harlem, New York, and I used to pick up packages, and I'd strap the packages to my body, and I'd go through the metal detectors at airports, and I'd fly on airplanes all the way down into Atlanta, Georgia. And when I got in Atlanta, I would drop off the dope and make my way back up, making stops in every city along the way. You know, I can even remember once when I was getting ready to go through the metal detectors, the detector had went off and my body was strapped with dope. Quick thinking, all I could do was turn around real fast and run to the bathrooms and think to myself, what would have happened if I had went through there and would have gotten caught? You see, there's something about that lifestyle that makes you think you're never going to get caught. So I was Mr. Escape Man, and I ended up coming back through, and I tucked all my stuff back underneath my suit, my double-breasted suit that I was wearing. And when I came back through the metal detectors, nothing went off. See, there was a lot of chances that I took because I liked the adrenaline rush that I got from carrying drugs onto airplanes and selling them and making the quick, fast money and having the dollar, being able to drive expensive cars and buy expensive things. You know, but it never satisfied me. Even to the extent that I remember one time some guys came and they knocked on the door and they were looking for one of my guys that I had out on the street that sold dope for me. When they knocked on the door, they had asked me where he was, and I told them that he wasn't at the house. They told me that if I didn't find him, they were going to come back and they were going to burn the house down. I turned around, I looked at my feet. I had my 2-year-old son there. I said, okay, I'll deliver the message. I picked up my son, handed him off to his mother. I grabbed a Louisville Slugger and I ran out the back door. I met those guys around the side of the house. I beat all 3 of those men down with the Louisville Slugger. You see, violence would be something that would consume my life when I was growing up. So the more involved I got into the drug trafficking and the more involved I got into living the lifestyle of a Tony Montana, it just drove me deeper and deeper into being committed to doing whatever I had to do and not letting anybody get in my way. Long story short, I ended up getting picked up in a grand jury indictment where I had 4 people testifying against me. In that grand jury indictment, I was looking at getting 12 to 24 years for every single charge. And I was guilty of all 12 to 24. I hired the best attorney in town with the best money that I had. The attorney represented me in the courts. I ended up making bond on that, which I think was a $60,000 or $70,000 bond. And when I had left there, I had went straight back to Harlem, New York, and I picked up another package because now I had to make double the money so that I could pay the attorneys to get me out of the trouble that I was in. When I ended up picking up the package and flying back down to Georgia, when I was coming back up, I ended up trailing behind a tractor trailer. That tractor trailer was going about 85 miles an hour, and I was just drifting behind it when a state trooper pulled us both over on I-85. I remember thinking to myself, man, now I'm going to get a traffic ticket, and I'm going to be late getting to the party that I'm headed to. Long story short, the state trooper never went to the tractor trailer. He came straight to my car with a 9mm pointed at my head. When he got to the driver's side of my car, he told me to wiggle out the window with my hands in the air. By the time my body hit the ground, he hog-tied me, threw me in his trooper car. And I remember when I got in the trooper car, I had no church upbringing. I had no knowledge of anything that was religious or Christian. But I knew that there was a religious radio station that was playing while I was in the car. So in my pocket, I had stacks of $100 bills. And I remember telling that trooper, take all the money that I have. Matter of fact, take all the drugs that I have in the car as well. He said, boy, I don't want your money and I don't want your drugs. I said, sir, the problem is I've never went to church. I said, I need to get church in my life. That police officer turned to me and he looked with his southern drawl and he said, boy, you need Jesus Christ in your life. Well, even with such a significant impact statement as that, it didn't mean anything to me because I didn't know who Jesus Christ was. When I realized that I wasn't going to be able to manipulate myself out of the situation, and violence, which is what I use most of the time, wasn't going to work in this situation, I found myself arrested again, already looking at 12 to 24 years in one state. Now I'm looking at 25 to 40 in another for drug trafficking. I remember waking up the next morning and there was a man standing in my cell. And the man standing there and didn't say a word, but he was looking at me as though he wanted me to come out and fight. Fighting was easy for me because violence was the way that I handled things. By the time that I had walked out of the cell into the main pod, this man began to challenge me, and long story short, he punched me straight in my back when I wasn't looking. When he did that, I picked up one of the food trays and I smashed this man right in his face and pressed him up against the wall. By that time, the goon squad, the security team of the prison had come up and separated us. And they told that man he had to go to lockup, but they said to me, hey, Veneta, do you want to go to church? Man, I remember looking and thinking to myself, I don't want to go to no effing church. As I turned to walk the other direction, I don't know what took control of me, but I did a 180-degree swing and walked straight out that door. And you know what church was? Church was a 4x4 cell with one other man. He was about a 40-year-old gentleman at that time. His name's Andrew Kirkman. And while I was sitting there, I remember I had really no interest in what they were talking about. And they handed me a little Gideon Bible that I had learned to carry around for years after that. And that Gideon Bible, they had asked me to open up and they asked me to read a section out of that Bible. When I read it, pretty much like the police officer making a comment like I needed Jesus, the Word of God didn't make any sense to me either. But then the man turned and he looked at me and he said 8 significant words that would penetrate my heart. He said, you look burdened. Can I pray for you?